It does feel now. This was obviously from two different perspectives here in Ashwaubenon and Green Bay, but it feels like they're really taking construction down to the 11th hour, man. Like I don't know. Obviously, I've never been to an NFL draft. This will be my first one, so I wasn't in Cleveland, I wasn't in Detroit, etc. But I imagine they might have been a little bit more ahead of this than the Packers are. This feels like they're getting everything together at the final minute. No criticism because it just needs to be ready by Thursday, but they've got hundreds and hundreds of construction workers here in Green Bay, Jason, which obviously you witnessed up close yesterday at Brian Gutekunst's press conference. Does it feel to you like they're kind of coming down to the last minute in terms of getting things ready?
It does. Now, our buddy Rob Domofsky did a really good piece on ESPN.com and
Yeah, it was really good.
ESPNWisconsin.com. And I love the fact that he talked to the folks that have their homes right on the corner of where the draft stage is. I thought it was a great idea. Really smart by him. I loved it. But I think he makes it clear in that story, and I think other people I've spoken to have made it clear that the NFL knows what they're doing. I took the elevator down. We're using a freight elevator to go up and down from
Goodness.
where we're going to be working from, which I felt like I was in like Die Hard or something. So it was a little. I don't have a lot of freight elevator experience, but I took it down with one of the kind of higher ups on the TV side from the NFL, and we were just making small talk. And I said, I'm excited for this. It's not my job to root for the home team, but I'm excited to have it in my town. I said,
Mhm.
I just hope we're going to look good, which I do think we will. But he said, oh,
Agreed.
there's no doubt. And here's the thing. All the folks that are involved with the broadcast and all the folks that are involved with putting on the event, they've all
Mhm.
done this a lot. They do Super
Mhm.
Bowls, they do international games, they do drafts. And so I agree with you. I was thinking the exact same thing. When I went into Lambeau yesterday, I was like, holy cow, they got a lot to finish still. And the draft is like 48 hours away or whatever it was at that point, 54 hours away. So I'm
Yeah.
super curious how they put it all together at the 11th hour, as you put it. I think you're right on the money, though. It feels like they're taking it down to the wire. Maybe they like
Yeah.
running the 2-minute drill. I hope they have three timeouts to stop the clock with, though.
Well, as somebody with ADHD, I do my best work under pressure. I don't know if Roger Goodell and company have ADHD. I don't know, man. But at the end of the day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's going to be a world-class experience, to your point. I mean, they're going to have everything in place. They're going to have everything ready. It's going to be the party of the year in the state of Wisconsin. It's going to be awesome. So looking forward to that. Before we get to more draft talk, Jason, do want to get your 2 cents on Jaire, which I know you've spent a lot of time on the last couple of days on Wilde and Tausch. But Brian Gutekunst at his press conference yesterday, which you were at, mentioned, we'll see what happens in the draft, and then we'll see where we're at in regards to what will happen with Jaire Alexander. And that phraseology, to use a Jason Wilde term, caught my ears, right? We'll see what happens in the draft. What would happen in the draft for him to make finally a decision on Jaire Alexander? Is he, to speak of the 11th hour, is he waiting to see if somebody will actually offer compensation in the draft this year for Jaire Alexander before he pulls the trigger on maybe releasing him?
Yeah, the challenge for me is to not allow my bias of this is what people that are smart have told me is going to happen, because I don't ever want to eliminate. I don't want to say, okay, this is definitely not what he's saying there, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't say that with absolute certainty. I did not take that as, well, we'll see if we get some corners in the draft, and if we don't, maybe we'll keep him. That I don't think that's what he said. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you can interpret it that way if you want. You can also think that all of us beat writers are trying to run Jaire out of town. That's just not the case. I took that as, we'll see if a team doesn't get a corner that wanted a corner, and now they have a need at corner, and they're willing to give us a day 3, 6th-round pick for Jaire. That's how I took it. And if they get through the draft and no one will have called because they don't want to take on his $16 million salary or whatever it might be, then they'll probably move on after the draft is over. But I think, in my opinion, the vibe that I've gotten all along, and look, remember, Goody articulated this himself. That's the craziest part about this for the
Mm-hmm.
Packers portion of the fan base that are holding out hope. And look, I'm among those folks. Okay, so it's okay. Hand up, I'm with you. I would rather have Jaire on this team than not because I like talking to him. I have a really good relationship with him. You and I talked about it after the final locker clean out. Like he
Yeah.
and I were, he was ready to talk to me, and then he saw the cameras, and then he did kind of this demonstrative. I don't even know if I'm going to be here, and
Yeah,
the window closed.
my favorite part of that, Jason, sorry to cut you off, just real quick. My favorite part of that interaction at locker cleanout when he said, I'm not going to talk, I don't even know if I'm going to be here, he pretty much gave us the information we needed, right?
He did.
Without talking
exactly
formally to the media.
Yeah.
Yeah. He pretty much answered the question you were going to ask anyway, which is nice of him. Anyway, continue.
Well, I would love for him to come back. I enjoy covering him. I've told the story a bunch how he embraced giving me words of wisdom to put on the back of our basketball team's T-shirt, and he wore his shirt proudly multiple times in the locker room. So I don't have any problem with Ja. The Packers have a problem with his lack of availability, and Goody has a problem with that. And frankly, I'm guessing, and I have not talked to him because he was putting me through this entire process of earning the right to have his phone number. So I don't have his number. I've not talked to him. I had people vouch for me. It was a whole thing. He enjoyed every minute of making it difficult for me. But I have not talked to him, but I would be willing to guess, an educated guess, that he doesn't necessarily want to be here anymore either. Like, I don't think he feels like, they stood up for him, that they appreciated the fact that he actually was hurt. I think he was really mad, and they were really mad that he didn't play in that Bears game after he said he could go. I think he's bothered that they didn't understand, hey, look, I tried to go, I couldn't, and they held it against me. All that stuff. I just think both sides are ready for a fresh start. So that's what I think ultimately will happen. But as Rob Domofsky reported quite a while ago, the Packers haven't asked him to take a pay cut because they don't want him to take one and stay.
Right.
And they also know that he would say no anyway. Like this idea that there's any sort of level of, conversation, I just don't see it. The end game is going to be he's going to be on someone else's roster. And if I'm wrong, great, because I would love to talk to him again. But I think I've probably had my last conversation with him.
That's unfortunate. Probably not your last conversation ever with him, but maybe you'll get his phone number one of these days. Jason Wilde with me, Alex Strouf here on ESPN Wisconsin Draft Week, Mr. Irrelevant, live on ESPN Wisconsin, the all-new ESPN Wisconsin app. So at the cornerback position, and look, I love Draft Week, Jason, because you have no idea how the draft is going to play out, but my brain is wired in a way where I try to figure out the direction Goody's going to go. Maybe not necessarily, doing a mock draft, but saying, okay, we know this is a position of need. So looking at corner, you have Carrington Valentine, you have Keyshawn Nixon, and you have free agent addition Nate Hobbs. That's pretty much your three you have on the roster. I, in my brain, have now conjured up this idea that the Packers are going to approach cornerback in this draft like they did safety a year ago, kind of taking the old adage, throw blank at the wall, see what sticks.
Spaghetti?
At corner, like spaghetti at the wall, yes, exactly. Spaghetti does stick if you throw it at the wall, if it's cooked, by the way. Just a fun fact for all of you science experts out there. I think that's the approach they take at corner this year. You think I'm onto something, or am I just trying to make things up because it's draft week?
No, you're making things up, but maybe you'll be right. A broken clock is right twice a day.
It's true.
Look, one of the things I was trying to get at with Goody yesterday, and I asked him a couple of different questions. The fact that you brought the three top wide receivers in this draft in for visits, does that mean you're looking at the position differently? He basically said no, right? Tetaroa McMillan is, I think, the best one of the three.
Fascinating.
At the same time, I asked Goody a question about you have never had a draft where you didn't have a first, second, and third round pick that you selected. Now, sometimes you had two. In 2022, you took both of the second round picks you had, yours and the Raiders from the Devontae trade, and moved up to take Christian Watson. But he's always had a first round pick, at least one. He's always had a second round pick, at least one. And he's always had a third round pick, at least one. He's only got 8 picks. He's only got one of each of those in this draft. So is he really willing to give up a 2 or a 3 to go up to try and get McMillan or a wide receiver, whichever wide receiver he really likes? Because, again, we don't know. But we know he went to Tetaroa McMillan's pro day, and we know he had him in for a 30 visit. So there's a level of interest there that's undeniable. But I didn't walk out of Lambeau yesterday and then walk along this really long fence to get an exit and then walk all the way back from the way I came on the other side of the fence to get to my car for I didn't feel like he was going to draft a wide receiver after that conversation. Now he still might, but I didn't. That was not the vibe I got. Now my vibes aren't always right, obviously, but I think they're more likely to keep investing on defense if somehow a wide receiver that was one of the three that visited is still there at 23. Look, I don't. We're doing and I forgot to. Sorry, Hunter, I forgot to send you all these answers to the questions. Things have been crazy, but on our video feed, we're showing all of the non-Packers things to do in Green Bay and your wish list and everything else. I'll tell you this, my wish list is really good stories, guys that have good stories. There's no doubt about that. But when I look at this team, I think that this is a team that is still going to keep investing defensively. So I think they need a corner more. I think they need a defensive lineman / edge rusher more. But I think the biggest takeaway that I got out of yesterday, Strouf, was that it's not lip service that Goody thinks that he's got a really good football team. Like, we talked about how he said at the NFL meetings, we've got everything we need on the defensive line. And we talked about how he refers to the wide receivers and the expectation of jumps by guys. And I thought, well, what the hell else is he going to say? He didn't add a defensive lineman, so he's got to say that they've got what they need. He didn't add a wide receiver other than McCole Hardman. He's not going to say, I should have traded for DK Metcalf because these guys aren't good enough, right?
Right.
And so, but I have now changed my take on that. I think he's a true believer. I think he thinks he's got a damn good roster and that all these young guys are going to coalesce and gel into a championship caliber football team. And he's going to augment the roster in this draft. And he filled a couple of needs in free agency. And he thinks, let's go, baby. I mean, that line that he had yesterday about if we had to play a game this week, I feel very, very good about my team. I don't think that was GM speak anymore. I think that's what he really believes.
And I hope he's right for obvious reasons, being a Packers fan. But I don't know, man. Like, I still feel like you have to acknowledge the shortcomings, right? A top-end receiver. The pass rush was not very good last year. And as we've talked about before, I think internally they view that more of a coaching issue than a personnel issue. That's why they made the change at defensive line coach. But we'll see what happens in the draft. But to your point, I think Goody does believe he has a really good roster because when asked if he needs a first-round pick that is an immediate contributor, the very first word out of his mouth was, no, Jason, which I guess if you look at Goody's draft history, not many of his first-round picks have been immediate contributors, right? Last year, Jordan Morgan didn't really contribute. Lucas Van Ness was a bench player, coming into the rotation a bit on the defensive line his rookie year. Jordan Love wasn't active for a single game his rookie year. So that's typically been the case. But as the youngest team in the league, Jason, I think you need guys that, like Edgerrin Cooper, like Evan Williams, like Jaden Reed and the tight ends their rookie year, who can come in and be contributors immediately, even if that doesn't mean they're star players, to get to the level that I think Goody already feels the Packers are at.
Well, and look, I think his point was, it's about opportunity, right? I mean, there was opportunity at linebacker. There was opportunity at safety last year. So those guys got opportunities, and they played well. Previous years, like 2022, there was opportunity all over the place, right? And it's one of the reasons, because they played so many rookies, that they were where they were in 2022 for a variety of reasons, but that's one of them. They're going to need guys that are going to contribute this year, but it doesn't have to absolutely positively be the first-round pick. Going back to our point about what he believes about this team, though, I think this also lends credence to how he handled the urgency question, right? I mean, I wasn't there at the NFL meetings, but, when I asked that question at the end of the press conference after the season about, you've talked about a lot of the potential and the good players and good locker room you have, what were you disappointed about? What do you need to improve on? And that's when he delivered the urgency answer. And someone asked him at the NFL meetings about it and how that applied to him. He just doubled down on the fact that his message was to the players. It wasn't about him. And so that further, in my opinion, underscores the fact that he thinks he's got the players. He needs those players to play with greater urgency, to become the players that they need to become for them to be a Super Bowl team. So again, I'm not saying that they are a perfect team by any stretch. I think the GM believes that he's got the team to get it done, and he's going to augment it over the next 3 days. And I think he feels very good, and he's not just blowing smoke. He's putting it on the players now to elevate their games and the coaches to help them elevate their games. And now we'll see. The one thing that I would caution Goody about, not that he cares about what I have to say, is that even if you believe wholeheartedly in your starting 22 plus, if you have a crap year injury luck-wise, look at what happened to Detroit. Look at what happened to San Francisco. San Francisco, to start the season last year, was not as bad as they ended up being. Detroit was better than what they ended up being. They still almost pulled it off and got to their first Super Bowl. But you're telling me if they had much better injury luck that they wouldn't have been in the Super Bowl? I'm sorry. I believe they were better than Philly.
Well, I agree.
They had their team together.
I agree with you on that. All right, last thing for Jason Wilde joining us here on Mr. Irrelevant, ESPN Wisconsin Draft Week, presented by American Family Insurance. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly with American Family Insurance. So we played a piece of audio from you yesterday, Jason, when you joined Craig Karmazin on Sunday Karma, and you mentioned the first round wide receiver idea, which we just talked about a bit, and you gave me credit. You said I saw Strouf posted about this the last time. They drafted a wide receiver in the first round. He was in diapers. It was Javon Walker in 2002. And believe it or not, a guy that doesn't love conflict has a bone to pick with you. Joshy DiMaggio, go ahead, buddy. You've got a bone to pick with Jason, I hear?
I think you're framing this wrong. The bone to pick is with you all along the time, is taking credit for my opinion and then passing it off on your own for Jason to be misled. Jason, I have no problem with you. I talked about this months ago when the Potawatomi draft odds came out and wide receiver was a distant fourth. And I said, I don't think that makes sense. They've been involved in the DK Metcalf thing, however you want to say it. And one of their first very visits was a first-round wide receiver. So to me, it would indicate that the Packers are looking at possibly taking a wide receiver in the first round. And then since then, you liked that opinion of mine and have run with it on every program you allowed. So Jason's clear by me. I don't even need the credit. All the loyal listeners to this very program know I've been saying it, and you just sort of jumped on my back. You're my backpack. Yeah.
Co-opted it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I always want to make sure that I'm on Big Cat's good side. That's one of the
good choice. I live on the opposite side. It's not very fun.
Secondly, look, their behavior supports, Josh, your opinion and Strouf, Josh's opinion that you stole, right? Like here I'll leave you with this. So, and we were talking about it after Goody wrapped up yesterday in the room. Last year, someone asked him about Cooper DeJean, and he gave a lengthy, detailed answer about how star-spangled awesome Cooper DeJean was. And we all looked at each other after he walked out of the room, and Domofsky said, well, I guess they're not picking Cooper DeJean, right? Because you don't talk about him that way. Yesterday, Matt Schneidman from The Athletic asked about Teteroa McMillan and asked him, you were the only GM that was there at his pro day. And Goody goes, no, I wasn't there. As a joke, right? And then he said, well, maybe I was the only one that was reported to have been there. And then when he was asked more about McMillan, he clammed up, which again, maybe nothing, maybe, hey, I'm not going to talk out loud about a guy I like a lot. So I think both of you, obviously you, Josh, primarily, could be right. But again, it goes back to my point, which is Goody going to give up his second and third round picks to go up to 10 to try and take this guy? I don't believe he will.
No.
So it's great that he clearly likes him. They brought him. Not only did he go to the pro day, but he was one of the guys they brought in.
Yeah.
So he clearly likes him. But again, if they end up with him, I told you, I'm rooting for the story. And that is a freaking unbelievable story. And we can talk about how he played coy in his pre-draft press conference. We can talk about how he was at the pro day. We can ask him, hey, was this when you decided, like Ted Thompson at Clay Matthews' pro day at USC, I got to get this guy. I got to do whatever it takes to get this guy. I just think that that's a great story that is not going to get told because he's not going to give up all that capital to get up to go get him. That's my opinion. We'll see how it unfolds on Thursday night.
I love it. I love it. You got me all fired up. I still think this is the year, but we will see if the Packers ultimately land a wide receiver at pick 23. This is like a mini version of Weekly Wildy, which we are we should probably do after the draft, which we do during the season every week. ESPN Milwaukee on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, the ESPN Wisconsin app. Jason Wilde, I always feel smarter after I talk to you, which I imagine you do not feel the same way about me, but that's okay. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, let's just say this. If they don't do all those things and they don't get McMillan, you could steal my opinion and say, oh, I told you guys on Mr. Irrelevant last Tuesday that they weren't going to do it. There's no way. And I won't even call you out on it.
Go away.
Deuces, B.
Take care, be good. That's a great Jason Wilde, man. He cracks me up.